up. I don't know if you can hear the engine. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a fantastic day. So today, big day, we are finally going to install a Holley EFI sniper system on my 1978 Jeep Cherokee. So what is it? In case you're not familiar, the Holley system is a system that replaces your 2 or 4 barrel carburetor and puts their own version of EFI on there, or as I like to call it, a throttle body injection. Now it's a fairly easy install if you look at the instructions and read them through front to back 2 or 3 times before you do the install. But we're gonna walk through it today. We're gonna do it. I'm gonna see exactly how long it takes me to do it. So behind me, I have the Jeep set up, ready to go. And the only thing I've done so far is removed the surge tank for my radiator, and I'll explain why here in a second. So let's look at the system of what we got and what it comes with. So here is my Holley Sniper EFI system right there, and this is your quick start manual, and honestly it's pretty easy. It comes in a big box right here, and well, it's already empty. So here is your throttle body injection, or the EFI system that Holley sends you. If you look, it basically looks like a 4-valve carburetor, but instead of having your fuel bowls and everything on the side, this is where the brains are to everything. So you have 3 fuel inlets. You have 1, 2, and 3. Now the front 2 are blocked off because I'm going to be using this rear one, and this is your fuel return right here. You have a couple of harnesses to plug in, and that's it. So with this system, it's actually fairly easy to wire into your vehicle. Here is your basic wiring harness right here, and it only requires you to hook up 4 wires to your vehicle. Now there is an extra one that you hook up to the fuel pump, so a total of 5, but 4 to your vehicle. I'm gonna show you what they are real quick. So just throwing this mess down on the table, you have a pink wire. So this pink wire right here is going to hook up to a keyed on system in your vehicle, to your fuse box. You need to make sure whatever fuse you choose, it does not turn off when cranking your engine, because sometimes they will. You have a red and black wire right here. Very simple, positive and negative on the battery, directly to the battery, nowhere else. On this one right here, I have a yellow wire. This is going to go to the negative side of my coil. And then we have this blue wire, which is your 5th wire that does not hook to your vehicle, but if you read it right there, it is your fuel pump with a built-in relay. Yes, that's it. Those 5 wires, 4 to your vehicle, 1 to the fuel pump. Let's talk about your fuel pump real quick. So there's 2 different kits you can buy. You can buy the basic kit, which I bought, or you can buy a master kit that comes with fuel line, fuel accessories, fuel pump, everything. Well, EFI systems don't like old style fuel tanks that don't have baffles in them, because the baffling stops the fuel from sloshing when you go around corners, hills, whatever. Remember, this is a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and I do want to take it off, do some mild off-roading. To alleviate the issues of not having baffles in this fuel tank, I went ahead and bought a surge tank rated at 500 horsepower. Now the Holley Sniper system I got is rated between 200 and 600 horsepower, but this engine is only about 215, 235 horsepower when it was new from the factory, so I should be pretty good. So don't pay attention. I've already was test fitting, figure out where this is going to go. It does not come with these Earl's fittings, but this is your surge tank. So with this tank, you can have a mechanical pump like the Jeep came with, or a 12 volt electric pump. The way this works is, this is my low pressure inlet where it'll pump from the tank into here. This is about 2 quarts, I think they said. And from here, it'll go through the high pressure pump all the way over to my throttle body injection in right here. From there, it'll go through the throttle body injection. Anything left will go through the high pressure return back into this fitting right here. And then if anything needs to go back to the fuel tank, it'll come out of this low pressure right here. Now, in speaking with Holley, they said I only want between 0 and 5 PSI on the return line going back to the tank, which shouldn't be a big deal. And you're supposed to hook up a sensor, and I will in the future. Now, how is this going to install? Well, it installs just like a carburetor, so not too hard, honestly. And with those 4-wire hookup that they send you, be pretty easy. So technically it is a 5-wire hookup system, but it doesn't hook to your vehicle. It hooks to the fuel pump. So that blue wire there will go to my surge canister, and the Holley EFI system will control that fuel pump right there. So enough talking, let's go ahead and start ripping this old stuff off and get the new stuff installed. So the carburetor has been removed. Let me show you what that looks like. So the carburetor's off. This is an Edelbrock intake manifold dual plane. So this is the vacuum line that goes to the vacuum assist on the distributor, and then this is my main vacuum line going into the back. You need to pay attention to these because these will re-hook up into your throttle body injection. And then I have my throttle cable right here. They do make adapter plates if you need them. And I have my return springs up here. So all of this fuel line here, I have pinched off, will get removed and rerouted. So next step, I need to install the temperature sensor in the intake manifold. So what I'm going to do is, once I remove this fuel line here, this is the old factory temperature sensor. I'm going to go ahead and remove this and put the new temperature sensor right there. There is another port on this manifold right down there, but it's been utilized by an aftermarket gauge in the dash. So we'll go ahead and leave that one in there. Coolant temperature sensor is in, and what I did is I relocated the aftermarket one I was in here with the one that came from the Sniper, because the Sniper says not to install it in the thermostat housing. So the aftermarket one, I just put right down in there, and then there is the Holley one. So the next step I'll do is put the Holley Sniper kit on here, and then start hooking up my vacuum lines to that and my throttle cable. The throttle body injection is in, the Holley Sniper kit is in, and there you go. I have gone down. It was kind of a pain, but it is 60 to 80 inch-pounds all the way around. And then around the back, you have 3 vacuum lines. So this is your vacuum advanced distributor. I know you can't really see it. The big one's your brake booster, and then your manifold. And it all says it right here in your instructions. So next thing I need to do is my fuel lines. So the fuel lines, like I said, I'll show you when I get it installed. I'm going to go low pressure lines from the tank and tank return, and then high pressure lines with all rolls fittings to this manifold. Now the key with your fuel lines is not to have any 90-degree bends. They want big sweeping bends, and not to have the fuel line twisted. So you don't want like a kink in it from a twist. You want a nice relaxed position. So that's my next step. And for you, it's gonna be just a snap of a finger. For me, probably 15 or 20 minutes. So far into this project, I probably have an hour, hour and a half. I'm taking my time, checking everything, and just double checking with the instructions. But honestly, it's pretty simple so far. So fuel lines will probably be the hardest. All right, so I have the fuel system all the way installed. Let me show you what it looks like, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I have the low pressure fuel line in here and the low pressure fuel return line right here. That's 1/4-inch fuel hose, and that's going down into the factory hard lines. I end up reusing those because hard lines are always better than soft lines. Now I have the high pressure going into a fuel filter around the back of the firewall into the throttle body injection. Now the screwdriver right here, if you notice, it's in the middle of a grommet, so I can run the handheld controller through the firewall. For the high pressure return, it's hooked in there. It's following the high pressure line back, and it goes right here. Now the only thing I've left to do to button this system up is to go ahead and take some P-clamps and mount the fuel line to the firewall and fender well so that it does not move. So the next thing I need to do is install the oxygen sensor, or the O2 sensor, into the exhaust. Now Holley says it needs to be between 1 and 10 inches from the collector or the manifold if it's not in the manifold. So here is the O2 sensor. I have already screwed it into the bung that I'm going to clamp to the manifold. Now, in order to do this, you have to drill a 3/4 inch hole in the manifold. Let me show you where that's at, and then I'll go ahead and get this installed. So here is my 3/4 inch hole, and for reference, I am on the passenger side of the vehicle. Here's my transmission cooler lines. So I can put my O2 sensor here, there's the manifold, and I can run the lines up out of the way, out of the heat, so that I don't melt anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that installed right here. Well, the install is done, and it's actually been done for about 2.5, 3 weeks. And let me explain real quick. So my SanDisk card went corrupt on my GoPro, and I lost over half of my footage. So not a big deal. It does not too much that missed out. So I'm gonna explain what's going on here right now, and then we're going to go ahead and do a cold start. Now, what I mean by cold start, it's been sitting for about 3 days. I'm going to show you how well it's starting up. Then I'm going to explain to you how well it drives, and honestly, I'm pretty excited. So let's go underneath the hood. I didn't want to move it or start it, so there's going to be little shadows, so show you the cold start. So this is exactly what it looks like under the hood, and honestly, it looks like a carbureted setup, and that's one reason I really like this Holley Sniper EFI. So just a quick recap. You got my fuel lines coming up to my surge tank down there. Going around, you can see I got some P-clamps holding these high pressure fuel lines and my fuel filter going around. So under there is the Sniper units, and then over here is the relays on the back firewall going to the fuel pump and everything else. Now this is the one wire right there. It is soldered in there. That had to connect to the ground side of the coil. I have my positive, my negative. The pink wire right here is going into the cab, and then the blue wire is going right here to the surge tank. I don't know if the sun's going to show you there. Now, as I was saying earlier, I do have a 12 volt electric pump also running to the surge tank. So how I wired that is, I took the power wire from the 12 volt low pressure pump, and it is piggybacked to the high pressure pump going to that same relay. I checked the voltage, the amp draw. I am well under the 40 amp relay on there. And basically the Holley system is controlling both fuel pumps. So I did have some issues on the initial startup. And I shouldn't say starting it, because the engine started very well. It ran, it idled, but never idled at the 750 RPM like I wanted to, once it was warmed up to 160 degrees or higher. Now I called Holley and they are super helpful, and it actually wasn't their system that was the issue, it was me, and I thought I had done some stuff that I didn't. So let me show you the first thing I had to do, and then I'll show you the second item, and now it runs great. The first thing I had to do was I had to add some grounds. So I went ahead, I added ground from the hood to the firewall. Now the reason I had to add that ground is your stud right here that's holding your air cleaner on acts like an antenna to the hood. Now with the hood up, there should be no RF interference, but when it's down, there's a lot of interference, and hood hinges are usually lubricated or painted, and they just don't make a great ground. I also added a couple more grounds that you can't really see, from the engine block to the frame. Even though I did have one, it didn't look the best, so I changed the engine block out to the frame, the engine to the battery. I added just a few more grounds in there to make this all nice and grounded. The second thing I had to do is, as I said earlier, RF interference, radio interference. My spark plug wires, if you look here, they're currently yellow. When I started this, they were blue. Now those old spark plug wires are new, and I know this is upside down, but if you look, it says radio suppression core, an 8mm wire. So those were the only wires that they had at the local auto parts store, and once I installed those, all of my issues went away. All the electrical issues, the surge and idle, everything went away. So now this thing runs really, really well. So how good does it run? Let's go ahead and let's do a cold start up and take her for a spin around the block, and I'll show you how good she runs. Okay, flipping the camera around, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the key to the on position, and you will see the handheld. Right now I just currently have it there. It's on a magnet cell phone mount, but once I get everything buttoned up and finally put the glove box in, it'll be the last thing I do. I'll go ahead and I'll get this mounted in here, so I'll have those extra gauges, and then I can remove these ones down there that I just won't need. They'll be redundant. So go ahead and turn the key to the on position. So what you hear is the fuel pump running, and it's priming the system. It's actually running both fuel pumps, and the screen will come on. So right now it is safe to start, or we're supposed to start it. If you look at your gauges, I have an RPM gauge. It says stall, which is good. It tells my coolant temperature, my battery voltage, and just a couple other things. Now I have these fan temperatures cranked way up because I am not using an electric fan. The system has a lot of stuff you can use that I am not using. I'm currently in open loop because it's not warmed up, and it is not in learn status. It will not hit learn status till it hits 160 degrees. So we'll go ahead and crank her up. Remember, it hasn't been started for about 3 days. Just like that. Now, the RPM is up, and once it hits a nice warm temperature, it will drop down and stay around 750 degrees. Let's go ahead and talk about drivability. This thing is really, really smooth, and honestly, I feel like it has more power than the carburetor. Now, is it because the carburetor was probably mistuned? Yeah, probably. But that's because I'm just not very versed in tuning 4-bell carburetors, honestly. Now, I could have taken it somewhere and done it, but honestly, for the startup of this thing, how smooth it idles, how it's not stinking up the house. I mean, the bad part with this before is when you did a cold start in the morning, it rained really rich when that choke was on, and I couldn't figure out how to get it adjusted out. That's more of a lack of experience on my part. And now it starts right up. I've started up in low 40s, high 30-degree weather, no issue. And the nice thing with this EFI is I can go off into the mountains and there's no issues with it. So let's get back to the house and talk about the pros and cons of this thing and wrap this video up. So pros and cons, let's talk about them. Well, honestly, I don't know of any cons other than the cost, and the cost really wasn't that bad. So I'm into this whole setup with the surge tank and the Holley Sniper kit, the fuel lines, everything, for under $1,500. I think it's right around $1,300 and change, $1,350, something like that. Now, I did buy a refurbished Holley Sniper kit that they don't have all the time, but it comes with the same warranty as a new one. They pretty much rebuild them, all new components on the inside. You're just getting the old exterior, which is covered up by an air cleaner, so that doesn't bother me at all. The install is super easy. Although there's 4 wires and the 1 wire to your fuel pump, there's not a problem at all, and it starts up really easy. It runs good, it idles good. Fuel mileage, well, I don't know what it is. I only got about 100 miles on it since I've done it. Now you're going, hold on, you finished this 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Why only have 100 miles on it? Well, there's one thing that's more important than going when you're driving a vehicle, and that's stopping. So when I went to install the new parking brake cables, the extended ones after the lift, well, I found out how bad the rear brakes were, and you'll see that in the next video. The front brakes were great, but I refused to drive it with the rear brakes the way they were, so stay tuned for that, because boy was I surprised. Now, cons on this, there really aren't any other than your fuel tank. Remember, baffles, fuel injection pumps don't like to pull, typically they like to push. So that's why most fuel injection pumps are submerged within the tank. So I had to add a surge tank for mine to overcome that problem, but you could go ahead and buy a fuel injected tank or a tank with baffles or a different type of tank to modify in here. I want to keep it all stock. So I went ahead and did the surge tank route. Yeah, it's a couple $100, but you know what? It was cheaper than a whole new tank. Other than that, this system does so many more functions than I use it for. It's ridiculous. I have a whole set of wiring harnesses that I didn't even use that controls 2 different fans. You can have it adjust the idle with your AC switch on, and way more than I even looked at. Now, there is one more thing you can add to this system, and that's the Holley HyperSpark distributor, and that will let you adjust the timing from your handheld unit. Now, I didn't put that in here because, well, right now I want to do one thing at a time to make sure the Holley system is running good before I add the HyperSpark distributor. Am I going to do it? I haven't decided yet, because right now it's just running that well. So would I do this again? Absolutely. If I ever get another carbureted vehicle, if I sell this one and get another vehicle to play around with, just like I'm doing with this, definitely, if it comes to the carburetor, I'm putting a Holley system on there. Now, I know there's other systems out there. I just chose Holley because, well, their reputation and their customer service. I called them a couple of times before I bought the system to ensure that I had everything I needed, and I'm glad I did, because when I did run into an issue, they worked with me, and it was just some spark plug wires that were $60 to replace and a couple grounds, and that was it. So I hope you liked the video. I hope you learned something. Don't be scared to install one of these systems yourself. It is not hard. Total time invested without me trying to chase down the grounds and the spark plugs is around 3.5 to 4 hours. The hardest part of this whole system, honestly, was my fuel system. How was I going to run the fuel lines to the surge tank, and where was I going to place the surge tank so that it was up out of the way? Because remember, this is a 4-wheel drive vehicle. I want the ability to take it off-road, and I don't want a surge tank hanging down, get caught on something, and then you're really stranded out. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Until next time.